Welcome to Guns 101, our video welcome message for new gun owners. It's brought to you by the Self-Defense Radio Network. I'm Rob Morse from Self-Defense Gun Stories. My partners are Amanda Suffolk from Eye on the Target Radio. The guy behind the curtain there, he's doing the heavy tech lifting. That's Paul Lathrop from the Polite Society podcast. We're very fortunate to have a friend, an instructor, author of many books and magazines, former law enforcement officer, senior firearms instructor, head of the Massad Ayoob group, Massad Ayoob. Massad, firearms, you've written about so many of them. Talk to us about revolvers. We think they're old-fashioned. No, they're cutting edge.
Well, not necessarily cutting edge, but everything has its place, particularly for new shooters. The revolver is a very common recommendation and a very valid one because of its simplicity in administrative handling. That is, routine loading, unloading, checking, and cleaning. With a double-action revolver, you want a modern solid frame type. To open it, you simply, on this Colt, retract the cylinder latch and with your thumb push the cylinder open. With the Smith & Wesson or similar guns like the Taurus and the Rossi, you would push forward on the latch and manually bring the cylinder out of the frame. And with the very popular Ruger revolver, press inward. It's going to be clearly visible and also palpable. It's a good idea to get in the habit of checking sight and feel in case you ever have to clear one in the dark. They require relatively little maintenance unless you're shooting them a lot, and once left at rest, they don't have any springs that are going to fatigue on you. The key thing the new shooter has to watch for is a little bit of terminology alert here. Double action means a couple of different things. It means, for one thing, that if you watch the cylinder and the hammer, as I pull the trigger, two things are happening. One action is the raising of the hammer, and as the trigger pull is completed, it's the dropping of the hammer and the firing of the shot. But the other reason they're called double action is a conventional one like this with an exposed hammer. The hammer can be cocked by the thumb, creating a very short, very light and easy press of the trigger. Target shooters like that, but it's exactly the opposite of what you want for home defense in a high-stress situation. We know one of the first rules of firearm safety is keep your finger off the trigger until you're in the very act of intentionally discharging the gun. The problem is people have seen thousands of times on TV and movies, anybody holding a gun is holding it like this, often with the hammer cocked. Then someone sees you pointing the gun at the guy and yells, "Hey!" And you have a startled response. As the finger closes, the shot is fired. This is why so many police departments, when revolvers were still standard, went to double action only, with no provision for the hammer to be cocked. If the gun was the original configuration inside the gun, they would install a hammer with the single action cocking notch removed. And it makes things safer in the sense that it takes a lot of possible unintended discharge situations off the table. The cartridges are simply loaded into the chambers by hand. While we have speed loaders that load the whole gun with one stroke, they're not necessary for the gun that's simply going to be kept loaded for an emergency. Always remember to take the time to learn how to run the gun. We've had cases where people, when a cartridge was stuck, didn't know how to get it out because nobody had told them this little stick here is the ejector rod that removes the cartridges. And I worked one homicide case that was so because someone tragically didn't know how to remove the live round from the chamber. With any of these, we're going to suggest that when you handle the gun, handle it the way that you'd be using it for real. Never hold the gun lightly or loosely. Whenever your hand hits one of these, everything but the trigger finger should take a firm grasp. That greatly reduces the chance of it being accidentally dropped or knocked from your hand. Anytime you unload the gun, we're going to suggest that you not do the old tip of the thumb press here, because when the gun gets dirty or a hot, high-pressure round is fired, the brass casing fire forms into the chamber and may require a good deal of pressure to get it out. So we teach one hard, sharp slap, particularly on these shorter barreled guns, which have a commensurately shorter ejector rod. So basically, when it's loaded, you want it loaded all the way up. The old keep an empty chamber under the hammer goes back to 19th century designs. And with a modern gun, it's not necessary. One of the shortcomings of the revolver is it has less cartridge capacity than the semi-automatic pistol. And you don't want to cut down what's already a short rotation of cartridges.
Well, that's pretty interesting. So go back a minute. You used a term that I'm not sure that a lot of new people know, yet it's pretty interesting, which is fire formed. So explain what that
fire formed. The brass casing of the cartridge, when a 38 special goes off at, let's say, 15, 17,000 pounds per square inch pressure, as many as 40,000 or more with a 357 Magnum, the brass expands and forces itself against the steel walls of the cylinder's chamber. That means they're stuck in there, and you need a good bit of pressure to force them back out.
Okay, so you're saying that a bullet that you can drop in easily, even though now that it's empty, may not come out as easy, and so that's the
correct.
expectation.
And one other thing you'll find with that is when the cartridge is in there, right now it's a proper fit, and it should fall out by its own weight. The live cartridge with the lead bullet in it. What we found over the years, you take Grandpa's gun that was put in the sock drawer in 1970. Time has gone on. Verdigris may have developed. We've looked into guns and found green stuff in there, and we literally had to pound the live cartridges out. And that's one thing the first-time gun owner may run into, the Grandpa's gun syndrome.
Okay, and I think that's a good point, because in this time right now, there's not only people who went and bought new guns, it's people who had inherited a gun and they'd set it somewhere, and now all of a sudden they've decided to pull it out. So what should new, or let's say old revolver owners who got someone's gun, what should they look for in a revolver to make sure that it is a good self-defense gun for them and their family as they're setting things up?
Well, with any of them, the first thing you've got to look at is it's going to be more difficult to shoot than most of the semi-automatics because of that long, heavy double-action trigger pull. It's another reason we recommend, whenever you hold this thing, good hard grip. This particular gun here weighs about 14 ounces, a Smith & Wesson ultralight. The pull weight on some of these is as much as 14 pounds. When you put 9 to 14 pounds pressure on something that weighs only a pound, nature's going to take its course if you're not holding it steady. If you can, try to get the crease of the index finger here, what we call the power crease, centered on the trigger. That will give you a lot more leverage than the fingertip or the finger pad. Hold the gun real tight, smooth roll as you keep the sights on target. The actual inspection of the gun, you want to lightly touch the cylinder, triple check that it's unloaded, lightly touch the cylinder like you were taking a radial pulse. With that light touch on the cylinder, which simulates the friction drag of live cartridges in the chamber going against the metal here in the frame window. Slowly roll the trigger till the hammer drops, making sure the muzzle's in a safe direction. Make sure that the cylinder is locked up tight. Give it this little wiggle each time. If after you've dropped the hammer, you get a little tick like this, that tells you the gun is out of time. It means each of these chambers is no longer aligning perfectly with the barrel. Soon it'll start shaving lead, spitting lead violently out to the side, which could cause an injury to a shooter next to you. And eventually it will get so bad the gun will no longer be able to fire.
Okay, so if somebody's left you, Aunt Maisie gave you, your Uncle Ed's gun, make sure that it feels all nice and solid. It's not all wiggly and wobbly. And if you've got a question, take it to a gunsmith. Have someone else look at it and get it going that way. But a revolver is a good choice for a lot of people. So we're going to wrap this segment and we're going to be back. So Massad Ayoob, we've got him here to tell us a variety of different things, and you're going to love all these videos. So I suggest that you go look for the other ones because you're going to love them all.